All right, fan, let's talk. It's a short week. The Dallas Cowboys are staring down a massive Thanksgiving matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, and this team is rolling into Thursday with a mix of encouraging signs and a couple of tough setbacks. That's why today's breakdown matters. It's the kind of week where every detail can swing the outcome. Now, before we get into the Cowboys-specific updates, there's a piece of non-Cowboys news that directly helps Dallas. Chiefs Pro Bowl guard Trey Smith, arguably their best offensive lineman, will not play on Thursday. High and low ankle sprains at the same time, that's brutal. And without him, Kansas City is forced to shuffle the deck up front. Mike Caliendo? Maybe. Wanya Morris? Possible. But the likeliest answer seems to be Jalen Moore, who has far less experience in that spot. And look, this is where the Cowboys' defensive front can feast. Osa Odigizua, Kenny Clark, and the rotation up front under Matt Eberflus have been trending upward. And the fact that the Eagles somehow didn't expect Dallas to run that heavier five-man front last week? That's wild. We've been talking about it for days. You'd think Philadelphia would have at least watched one film session, but that's in the past. What matters now is this. The Cowboys should be able to win in the trenches against a weakened Chiefs interior. And that could be the difference in a game where Patrick Mahomes will do everything in his power to stay clean. However, here comes the bad news. This short week also hits Dallas at the worst possible time injury-wise. There are moving pieces, uncertainties, and one major setback on offense that we'll break down next chapter. But before we move forward, because this really could swing Thursday's game, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Cowboys' defensive front can dominate Kansas City without Trey Smith out there? Yes or no? Drop it in the comments. And hey, since this is a Monday afternoon video that didn't even get a push notification, I'm asking for your help. Hit that subscribe button so we can get closer to 17,000 subscribers and make sure you never miss a Cowboys update. All right, coming up, the injury that's hitting Dallas hard, and the surprising bright spot who may be stepping in sooner than expected. Now let's get into the tough part, because this one really matters for Thursday. Tyler Guyton is dealing with a high ankle sprain, and that's the kind of injury that doesn't just go away with tape and adrenaline. The early expectation is that he's going to miss time, and realistically, you shouldn't expect him to play against the Chiefs. Honestly, you probably shouldn't expect him to face the Lions either, but the staff will see how he responds before making that call. It's frustrating for him because he was finally stacking some of his best games of the season. Sure, he had two really bad penalties recently, one of them flat out terrible. But overall, his level of play had been trending upward. You could see the confidence growing. But when one door closes, sometimes another cracks open. And that's where the good news comes in. Nate Thomas stepped in against the Eagles, and quietly, he played one of his better games. He wasn't a liability in the run game, he didn't look overwhelmed, and he handled his side of the line with solid balance. What stood out the most was how much more natural he looks playing left tackle. It's not perfect, and nobody should expect a backup to suddenly perform like an all-pro. But if you were hoping for someone steady, someone who won't sink the offense, Thomas gave you enough reason to breathe a little easier. This is a huge storyline heading into the Chiefs game. Protecting Dak Prescott becomes even more important on a short week, especially with a Kansas City defense that thrives on disguised pressures and speed off the edge. And that leads me to a question I want you to think about. What's your confidence level in Nate Thomas? Starting at left tackle? If you had to score it from 1 to 10, where do you land? Drop that number in the comments because I want to know where Cowboys fans stand on this. And while you're thinking on that, let me remind you, this channel keeps growing because fans like you keep showing up. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a quick second and hit that button. Every new subscriber pushes us closer to the goal of 17,000 and ensures you never miss a Cowboys breakdown, especially during weeks like This where information changes fast. Now, Guyton's injury isn't the only uncertainty this week. The defensive side has some question marks too, especially in the secondary. Coming up, we'll break down a concerning situation involving one cornerback, a surprisingly strong performance from another, and what it means for the Cowboys heading into Thursday. Let's shift to the secondary, because this group quietly played one of its more complicated games of the season. And depending on how the next couple of days unfold, the defensive backfield could look a bit different against the Chiefs. First, Kalen Carson. He left the game with what was originally called cramping, came back in, then left again. Anytime a player goes down twice on a short week, with limited practice windows, you have to treat it as a real question mark. You're not getting a normal injury report this week, so there won't be much clarity. At this point, his status is up in the air, and the Cowboys need to be ready for the possibility that he's not available on Thursday. Now, that uncertainty put more pressure on the other corners, and here's where things get interesting. Shavon Revel, despite what the raw numbers show, actually held up well. Yes, he allowed 3 catches on 3 targets, but all 3 were against A.J. Brown. There's no shame in that, especially when you consider that Revel has barely played football in more than a year. For someone still regaining game speed and confidence, what he put on tape was encouraging. He didn't panic, he didn't bite on fakes, and he competed snap after snap. And then there's Darren Bland, who needed a response after that disastrous game against the Cardinals earlier in the season. And to his credit, he delivered one. He had one bad missed tackle that turned into a touchdown, but outside of that, Bland was sharp. He closed windows quickly, broke on the ball with confidence, and allowed only short, manageable gains. On 7 targets, he gave up 59 yards and 1 pass breakup. But what mattered most was how in control he looked. That's the Bland Cowboys fans were expecting to see all year, and getting him back on track makes life a whole lot easier for this defense. This secondary is going to be tested again Thursday, no doubt about it. Even without Trey Smith, the Chiefs' offense spreads you horizontally and forces discipline. The Cowboys will need their corners to communicate cleanly, especially if Carson can't go. Let me throw a quick question your way because I want to hear your take. Who impressed you more against the Eagles? Shavon Revel or Darren Bland? I'm genuinely curious which performance stood out to you when you watched it live. And while you're dropping your answer in the comments, do me one more favor. If you appreciate these breakdowns and want deeper coverage every week, hit that subscribe button and help us reach 17,000 subscribers. It's free, and it makes a massive difference in keeping this channel growing. Now, the secondary wasn't the only unit balancing good and bad moments. Coming up next, we have to talk about a position group that continues to be a mixed bag, the linebackers. Now let's move into the linebacker room, because this group continues to be one of the most frustrating parts of the Cowboys' defense. Every week you see flashes, just enough to make you believe the ceiling is high. And then right behind that, you get the kind of inconsistency that makes you shake your head. And against the Eagles, that pattern showed up again. The Cowboys started the game trying something a little different. They leaned early on Maurice Linguard, and it did not go well. He looked hesitant, a step slow, and out of sync with the flow of the offense. The coaching staff clearly saw the same thing because they quickly pulled him back and didn't rely on him much the rest of the way. That was a pretty loud statement. What was surprising, though, was how little Shamar James played. On paper, with Jalen Hurts on the other side, you'd think having a faster linebacker would help cut off the QB run game and react to those quick RPO windows. But the Cowboys barely used him. Instead, the bulk of the snaps went to Kenneth Murray, DeMarvion Overshown, and Logan Wilson. Murray had the flashy moment, that big fumble recovery with multiple Cowboys swarming the ball. But beyond that, you still saw the same problems we've talked about for weeks. The inconsistent tackling, the slow pursuit angles, The late recognition in space. He made some nice closes in coverage, but the total body of work still leaves you wanting more. And honestly, I don't think he outplayed Wilson. Because if you really watched the game, Logan Wilson was the more reliable linebacker. He diagnosed quicker, tackled cleaner, and held his ground in the run game. And here's where grading systems don't tell the whole story. PFF somehow gave Wilson a worse overall grade than Murray, even though Wilson graded higher in run defense and tackling. It doesn't really add up, and if you watched the game without numbers in front of you, you saw who really made the steadier contributions. As for Overshown, you're still waiting for that one signature performance where everything clicks. But even without that breakout moment, he didn't bust coverages, didn't allow big plays, and stayed mostly disciplined. That's progress, even if it doesn't pop on a stat sheet. So with all that in mind, let me ask you directly. Because the Cowboys are going to have to make decisions on snap counts very soon. If you could only pick 2 linebackers in nickel, who are you riding with? Murray, Overshown, Wilson, Shamar James, or Lingard? Drop your answer. I want to see how split the fanbase is on this. And while you do that, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and help us push towards 17,000 subscribers. Every new subscriber helps this channel grow, and it keeps these breakdowns coming your way. Alright, next we need to address one player who might be reaching a critical point with this team. And that's Cavante Turpin. Alright fan, let's finish strong with the tight ends and the penalty situation, because both played a bigger role than most people realize against the Eagles. First, Jake Ferguson. He almost cost the Cowboys a game with a near fumble, but overall, he delivered. His blocking was solid, helping open lanes for Dak Prescott and giving the offense breathing room. And his work in the passing game? That touchdown catch in the back of the end zone was a reminder that Ferguson isn't just a blocker. He can make plays when called upon. Then there's Brevin Spann-Ford, who continues to emerge as a force in the run game. He's not quite the freakish physical presence of some of the other tight ends we've seen league-wide, but he consistently moves defenders, creates space, and contributes in the passing game. That size, that power, it's making a difference for Dallas. And with the short week, expect the coaching staff to look for ways to get him more involved. He's earned it, and frankly, he might deserve more snaps than Luke Schoonmaker. Now, on the flip side, let's talk about penalties, because this is the part that can cost you games against a team like Kansas City. The Cowboys slipped back into being penalty boys last week. Tyler Guyton had 2, Tyler Booker had 1, though it was declined. Ryan Fennoy had 1, Shamar James had 1, Cavante Turpin had 1, Jake Ferguson had 1, and Genevian Clown went off sides. That's 8 penalties for 69 yards. It's not devastating in total yardage, but it's a slow killer, wearing on rhythm, drive momentum, and player focus. Penalties are avoidable. They're self-inflicted wounds. Against an explosive offense like the Chiefs, these small mistakes get magnified. The Cowboys need to dial this back immediately. Consistency, focus, and discipline aren't just coaching points. They're the difference between a win and a tough loss. So here's my final takeaway for you. This week is a mix of hope and caution. Injuries like Tyler Guyton's matter. Flashes from Nate Thomas, Revel, and Bland give reason for optimism. Tight ends are stepping up, but penalties and inconsistent performance in the linebackers and wide receiver spots keep you on edge. The Cowboys have the pieces, but the challenge will be execution. And before we wrap up, 2 quick questions for you, fan. Should Spann-Ford get more snaps than Schoonmaker? And are penalties the Cowboys' biggest self-inflicted problem right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Also, if you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe button to help us hit 17,000 subscribers and keep these in-depth Dallas Cowboys breakdowns coming every week. Let's finish this season strong, and we'll see what the Cowboys bring against Kansas City.